Black Billionaire pretends to be in a coma, but when he hears his nurse's confession, everything changes. The presidential suite of the private clinic was plunged into silence, broken only by the constant beeping of heart monitors. Malcolm Reynolds, 42, a billionaire in the technology sector and one of the few black CEOs among the world's 500 largest companies, had been lying motionless for 18 days. An unexplained accident in his private jet had left him with a red scar across his left temple, the only visible mark of the tragedy that had almost taken his life. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. What no one knew, not even his private doctors, was that Malcolm had awakened on the third day after the accident, and he decided to remain silent, keeping his eyes closed and his breathing controlled for a very specific reason. He needed to find out who had sabotaged his aircraft. "We need to reconsider our strategy, Victor," said Julia Reynolds, his wife of 7 years, from the other side of the glass door. Her voice was muffled, but perfectly audible in the silence of the room. "The board is restless, investors are nervous. We can't wait indefinitely." "Patience, dear sister," replied Victor, Malcolm's half-brother and vice president of operations at Reynolds Tech. "One more week, and the board will vote to activate the incapacitation clause. Remember our agreement with Dr. Lauren? The medical reports are ready." Inside the room, beneath the surface of stillness, Malcolm's heart raced. His instincts were right. The accident had been just the beginning. The sabotage of the aircraft had not been a simple assassination attempt, but part of an elaborate plan to take control of his empire. "What about his lawyer, Diana Coleman?" Julia asked. "She's still insisting on seeing the original test results. Diana won't be a problem for much longer," Victor replied with icy confidence. "I've arranged a meeting for her with the Bar Association's Ethics Committee. It seems some incriminating documents have been discovered in her office." Malcolm felt his blood boil as he listened to the conspiracy against his most loyal advisor. Diana Coleman, one of the few black lawyers in the corporate world, had been his mentor in law school and then his right-hand woman in building Reynolds Tech. The bedroom door slid open softly. The footsteps that entered were different. Light, rhythmic, careful. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds." The voice was clear, professional, without the false sweetness that many used when speaking to unconscious patients. "I'm Maya, your new night nurse." Malcolm caught the faint scent of lavender as she moved around the room, checking his vitals and adjusting something on his monitor. "Your readings are stable," she said, making notes. "That's good." There was a moment of silence. Then he felt the light weight of someone sitting down in the chair next to the bed. "I don't know if you can hear me," Mia continued, her voice now low, almost confessional, "but I need to tell you something. I shouldn't be here." Malcolm kept his breathing perfectly controlled, though his curiosity was immediately piqued. "I was hired 3 days ago to replace your previous nurse. She resigned suddenly, or so I was told." Maya paused. "But last night, I found something strange while reviewing your medical records. The sedation levels are well above protocol for your neurological condition, and there are discrepancies in the reflex reports." She leaned closer, her voice now just a whisper. "I'm not just a nurse, Mr. Reynolds. I'm a specialist in forensic neurology, and I can tell you with certainty that something is very wrong with your treatment. Someone is deliberately keeping you sedated, preventing your recovery." Malcolm's heart skipped a beat, a movement too slight for the monitors to detect, but real nonetheless. "I don't know who would do this, or why," Mia continued, "but I promise I'll find out, and I'll help you wake up, even if it means risking my job or worse." She stood up and adjusted the 4-drip. "I'm reducing your sedation gradually. No one will notice, but within a few days, you should start showing signs of consciousness. When that happens, we can. The door swung open. Maya stepped away from the bed with professional ease, just checking vital signs as requested. "Dr. Lauren," she said, her tone completely transformed. "Thanks, nurse," a male voice replied. "I'll take it from here." When the door closed, Malcolm felt simultaneously alarmed and hopeful. In a world where he thought he was completely alone, he had just found an unexpected ally. But what Mia didn't know, what no one suspected, was that he was already conscious. And behind those closed eyes, a plan was forming that would turn this family betrayal into his most powerful weapon. What no one in that luxurious clinic could imagine was that this man, whom everyone considered helpless, had built an empire precisely because he saw opportunities where others saw only obstacles. And now, lying motionless while they plotted to steal everything he had built, Malcolm was already beginning to plot not only his recovery, but the spectacular downfall of those who dared to underestimate him for being an outsider who had earned his place among the powerful. If this story of betrayal, resistance, and the unlikely alliance between a billionaire and a nurse has piqued your curiosity, sign up now to find out how Malcolm will turn his apparent fragility into the greatest strength against those who tried to destroy him. Malcolm's plan began to take shape on the third night after meeting Maya. As she adjusted his pillow, he risked an almost imperceptible movement. He twitched his index finger twice when she asked if he could hear her. Maya froze, her eyes wide. You're conscious? A movement? Yes. Her expression changed from shock to determination. "We need to establish a code," he whispered, checking the door. "1 movement for yes, 2 for no. Blink once if you agree." A blink. That same night, while the clinic slept, they developed a simple system of communication. Maya brought cards with letters on them, and Malcolm spelled out words letter by letter. It was slow, exhausting, but every word formed was a small victory against those who sought to silence him. "They sabotaged my plane," he spelled out on the first night. "Who would do that?" Maya asked, incredulous. "Julia and Victor, my pal, his wife and his brother." "Why?" Project Aurora. Project Aurora, the revolutionary innovation that Reynolds Tech was secretly developing under Malcolm's direct supervision. A renewable energy system that promised to drastically reduce electricity costs in low-income communities. Malcolm had kept the details away from the board, sharing only with his small team of trusted associates. During the day, Maya watched. Victor appeared frequently, always accompanied by Dr. Lauren, reviewing medical records and asking seemingly concerned but calculated questions. Julia rarely visited, and when she did, she never touched Malcolm. Her eyes roamed the room, cataloging valuables as if she were already planning what she would sell first. "I have news about Diana Coleman," Maya informed him one evening after checking that no one was watching them. "I got a contact at her office. The ethics committee is pressuring her with falsified documents, accusations of bribery, and contract tampering. All fabricated, of course." Malcolm flashed a quick glance, anger evident, even in his state of forced immobility. "Don't worry, Mai," smiled confidently. "I've already sent her an anonymous message warning her about the charges. Diana is brilliant. She'll see right through the setup." Meanwhile, Victor was moving forward with his plan. Maya managed to record a conversation between him and Dr. Lauren in the hallway. "The board will vote next week," Victor said, checking his gold watch. "We need the final neurological report confirming permanent brain damage." "It's almost ready," Lauren replied, his voice low and nervous. "But the night nurse has been asking a lot of questions." She checked the previous records. Victor sighed impatiently. She's just a nurse. If she causes problems, fire her. What neither of them suspected was that Malcolm wasn't just listening. He was regaining his strength. Under Maya's careful guidance, he performed small exercises when no one was looking, flexing muscles, moving fingers, strengthening himself for the right moment. On the sixth night, Maya brought an unexpected visitor. "I have someone here who needs to see you," she whispered, closing the door quietly behind her. "I trust her completely." A stern-looking woman approached the bed, studying Malcolm critically. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Dr. Chun, a specialist in forensic neurology. Maya came to me concerned about your case." She looked at Maya, closed the curtains, and locked the door. For 30 minutes, Dr. Chun examined Malcolm discreetly without equipment that would alert the clinic staff. As we suspected, she finally declared, "There is no permanent neurological damage. The prolonged sedation is criminal. He's being kept in this state artificially." "We need hard evidence," Maya argued, "something that can't be challenged in court." "I have an idea," Dr. Chin replied, opening her briefcase. "But it's risky, and we'll need Mr. Reynolds' full cooperation." The next morning, Victor entered the Reynolds Tech Executive Boardroom with a triumphant smile. The board was assembled, 12 men and women in impeccable suits, ready to vote on the temporary transfer of power. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, handing out documents, "as you can see from the medical report, my brother has unfortunately suffered irreversible brain damage. Dr. Lauren recommends that we take decisive action to stabilize the company's leadership." Elizabeth Okafor. "Accident." "Tragedies happen, Elizabeth," Julia replied sweetly. "Believe me, no one is more devastated than I am." Elizabeth noticed that Julia wasn't wearing a wedding ring, even though her husband had been fighting for his life less than 3 weeks ago. "We all have great admiration for what Malcolm built," Victor continued, his honeyed voice hiding the ambition that pulsed beneath. "But we need to be realistic. The stock has already dropped 12% since the accident. Investors need stability." What Victor didn't realize was that Elizabeth was discreetly recording every word on her phone. A plan was in motion, not his, but Malcolm's. And while the conspirators believed they were one step away from victory, they didn't know that Malcolm Reynolds was already preparing for the most extraordinary appearance of his life. At that very moment, in the private clinic, Mia exchanged meaningful glances with Dr. Chun as they both looked at the results of a secret test they had just performed. The monitor showed something no one expected, something that would completely change the game. The man everyone believed to be on the verge of death was not only fully conscious, but had regained much more control over his body than anyone could have suspected. "Ready for the next phase?" Maya asked, as Dr. Chun put away the portable equipment. Malcolm's eyes opened fully for the first time in weeks, and a slow smile formed on his lips. "More than ready," he replied, his voice from disease, but loaded with determination. "They think they're taking over my empire, but they have no idea what's coming." The billionaire everyone believed to be lost in the shadows of a deep coma was, in fact, just waiting for the perfect moment to emerge. Not just to reclaim what was rightfully his, but to reveal a truth that would shake the very foundations of everything his family believed they had built. A secret that not even Maya, his most loyal ally, could have imagined. The Reynolds Tech boardroom was as quiet as a courtroom awaiting sentencing. Victor smiled discreetly as he distributed copies of the falsified medical report. Julia, sitting next to him, maintained an expression of fake sadness, occasionally touching the corner of her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Tears that never fell. "If there are no further questions," Victor announced, "we can proceed to vote on the temporary Transfer of executive powers as recommended by Dr. Lauren. Elizabeth Okafor raised her hand. I have one final question. Why isn't Dr. Lauren here to explain his medical findings in person? Victor exchanged a quick glance with Julia. Unfortunately, the doctor has been called away on an emergency, but his report is quite clear. As clear as his conscience. Victor, the deep, steady voice echoed through the conference room. All eyes turned abruptly toward the door. Malcolm Reynolds stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, leaning slightly on a dark wooden cane. At his side, Maya and Dr. Chun watched the shocked reactions of the board. Diana Coleman, his lawyer, followed close behind with a black briefcase in her hands. Julia knocked her glass of water onto the table. Victor froze, his face drained of color. That's impossible, Victor muttered slowly, rising to his feet. You're in a deep coma, Dr. Lauren confirmed. Dr. Lauren, Malcolm interrupted, stepping into the center of the room, is currently being questioned by the police on charges of falsifying medical documents and attempted murder through criminal medical negligence. Dr. Chun stepped forward, placing a set of neurological tests on the table. As an independent forensic neurologist, I can confirm that Mr. Reynolds was kept in an artificially sedated state without any medical necessity. His natural recovery was deliberately sabotaged. Absurd! Julia protested, her composure now completely shattered. My husband had a terrible accident. A very convenient accident, Malcolm added coldly. A jet with impeccable maintenance that mysteriously suffers a critical hydraulic failure precisely when you pushing for a review of the company's shareholding structure. Diana opened her briefcase and distributed documents to the board. Here, we have the records of communications between Julia Reynolds and Victor Hayes in the weeks leading up to the accident. You'll notice specific references to a permanent solution to the Aurora obstacle. The Aurora project, the heart of the social innovation Malcolm was developing low-cost sustainable energy for poor communities. This is ridiculous. Victor tried to regain control. Obviously, we're talking about technical obstacles to the project, not Malcolm. Malcolm smiled for the first time. Maya, please. The nurse stepped forward with a tablet playing a video. Victor in the clinic hallway talking to Dr. Lauren. Keep him sedated until the board vote. Then we can let nature take its course. A patient in a coma for this long. Accidents happen. The board members watched in utter shock. This is Dr. Victor stammered, his face now red with panic. A montage. You can't believe this. This nurse, forensic neurology expert, Maya corrected calmly, certified in digital evidence analysis. And we have much more. Diana stepped forward, placing another document on the table. Bank record showing substantial payments from an offshore company controlled by Victor to Dr. Lauren. Beginning 3 days before the accident, Elizabeth Okafor stood up, furious. This is disgusting. Attempted murder, corporate fraud, family betrayal. Malcolm approached Victor, who is now backing away. You know what fascinates me most, Victor? How you and Julia really believed you could take me down so easily. As if I, who built this company from the ground up, facing prejudice at every meeting, every negotiation, every investment round, would just give up. Julia, seeing everything fall apart, tried one last card. Malcolm, dear, you're confused. You're still under the influence of the medication. We were just trying to protect you. Spare me. Malcolm cut her off coldly. Is your wedding ring in your purse, or has it already been sold? A week after my accident, you are already planning how to redecorate my house. The security guards had quietly entered the room. Mr. Reynolds, said the head of security, the police, are waiting in the lobby. Shall we escort Mr. Hayes and Mrs. Reynolds there? Please. As the security guards approached, Victor panicked. You don't understand. The Aurora project will destroy our biggest contracts. The investors will flee. He's throwing away decades of work for a charity project. It's not charity, Malcolm replied calmly as Victor was led away. It's the future. And as for the investors, they've already approved it. The vote took place last night while you were plotting my death. When the room emptied, leaving only the stunned board, Malcolm finally sat down in the chair Victor had occupied minutes earlier. For a moment, exhaustion was visible on his face. I thought we were losing you, Elizabeth whispered, squeezing his shoulder. I would have been lost, Malcolm replied, looking at Maya, if it weren't for someone who refused to be an accomplice to an injustice, even when it would have been easier to remain silent. Oh, what no one in that room could have imagined at that moment was that the conspiracy against Malcolm Reynolds had revealed something much deeper than a simple family betrayal. Behind the smiles of relief and congratulations, and even more disturbing, truth awaited, one that connected the assassination attempt to a circle much broader and more powerful than just Victor and Julia. The justice of that day was only the first move in a much larger game where the true motivations for silencing Project Aurora would involve some of the most influential names in the country. And as Malcolm watched Maya talking, to Diana, one question lingered in his mind. How far would the loyalty of this woman, who risked everything for a Coma stranger, go? The answer he would soon discover would change not only his empire, but his entire understanding of trust, power, and the true meaning of family. 6 months had passed since that explosive board meeting. Reynolds Tech headquarters had been transformed, not just physically with the Aurora Project solar panels gleaming on the roof, but in its fundamental purpose. Malcolm watched the city from the window of his redesigned office. That morning's newspapers reported the final sentence. Victor Hayes, convicted of attempted murder and corporate fraud, sentenced to 15 years. Julia, his ex-wife, had taken 8 years after a plea bargain. Dr. Lauren had lost his medical license and was awaiting a separate trial. You need to see this, said Maya, entering the room with a tablet. The video showed children in a public school in a poor neighborhood testing. The new lights powered by the Aurora system. The first pilot project is working perfectly. A 78% reduction in energy bills. Malcolm smiled. What about the investors? Still nervous about our social turnaround? Nervous. The stock is up 42% since the announcement of the national rollout. Looks like doing good can be profitable after all. Elizabeth Okafor entered, followed by Diana Coleman, now Reynolds Tech's chief legal officer. The foundation is officially established, Elizabeth announced, placing the final documents on the E-table. The Reynolds Ellis Foundation for Ethics in Healthcare. Malcolm noticed Maya's surprised look when she heard her last name linked to his. You saved my life, he explained simply. Your name deserves to be there. I still can't believe you did that. Mia shook her head. Allocating 30% of the Aurora Project's profits to reform ethical practices in hospitals. Each participating hospital implements safety systems for vulnerable patients, Diana added. Password prot. Start Part 3, Far 3, Ictor from prison. Malcolm raised his eyebrows. And what did our dear conspirator want? To negotiate, believe it or not. He said he has information about other executives involved in sabotaging the Aurora project. Apparently, his plan had more participants than we thought. Big names in the traditional energy industry. Malcolm didn't seem surprised. I always knew there was more to that conspiracy. Victor didn't have the intelligence to orchestrate it all by himself. "Do you want me to arrange a visit?" asked Diana. "No," Malcolm replied, turning back to the window. "Leave him where he is. The truth has a way of emerging on its own, in its own time." Later that day, Malcolm and Maya walked through the company's new research center. Young scientists from diverse backgrounds worked on advanced prototypes of the Aurora system. "You know what impresses me most?" Maya commented, watching the team. "It's not the technology, it's the culture change. Half of these researchers would never have had a chance in a traditional corporation." Malcolm nodded. "When you're on the floor like I was in that hospital bed, you realize who really cares and who just pretends. That experience taught me to judge people by their character, not their appearance or credentials." "You could have just moved on after getting your company back," Mayo observed. "Why bother changing everything?" Malcolm paused, staring at her seriously. "Because I discovered something in that hospital room. Power without purpose is empty." Victor and Julia had everything: money, status, influence, and yet they wanted more, to the point where they tried to kill me for it. "And me," Malcolm continued, "I built a technology empire, broke barriers as a black man in a hostile corporate world. But for what? It took me nearly dying to understand that true success isn't just about what we achieve, but what we build for others." On the way back to the office, they stopped in front of a new addition to the main lobby. A glass plaque engraved with a quote, "True strength isn't how much power you accumulate, but how you respond when that power is threatened. It is in our moments of greatest vulnerability that we discover our true essence." Maya smiled as she recognized her own words spoken to Malcolm. During one of those nights at the clinic, who would have thought? She murmured that a temporary nurse and a billionaire supposedly in a coma would change so many lives. Malcolm took her hand gently. "We're not done yet. We're just getting started." That night, while Victor contemplated the gray walls of his cell, and Julia tried to adjust to life in federal prison, Malcolm and Maya finalized plans for the largest expansion of Project Aurora, bringing affordable energy to historically neglected communities on 3 continents. The conspiracy to destroy Malcolm Reynolds had not only failed, it had catalyzed a transformation no one could have predicted. His near-death experience reborn him with a higher purpose, proving that sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what really matters. This story reminds us that our greatest strength does not lie in the power we hold, but in the integrity with which we use it. That behind the greatest injustices can be born the most powerful transformations, if we have the courage to turn our suffering into purpose. If this story of betrayal, resilience, and redemption touched your heart, subscribe to our channel for more stories that show how the darkest moments of our lives can become the prelude to our greatest impact on the